Hello, this is Georgina Rose, part-time esoteric content creator and part-time occultist, and welcome back to the Darling YouTube channel. On this channel, we discuss religion, mysticism, and the occult. And in this video, we're back to my Occult 101 series, the flagship series on this channel, where I give beginner, intro-friendly introductions to wide occult paradigms, esoteric concepts, ideologies, practices, and more. And in this video, a highly requested one, and one that I've been meaning to do for quite some time, I can't believe it's taken so long for me to get to it, we're going to be discussing Gnosticism. So Gnosticism is one of those things that comes up a lot when you mention the occult. It's one of probably the more mainstream occult philosophies. Of course, when you think about the occult, the first thing that is mainstream that comes to mind is either like Wicca or New Age or spiritualist concepts, but Gnosticism comes up pretty quick. A lot of people are familiar with a series of documents that were released a couple years back called the Gnostic Gospels, but Gnosticism actually has a long and rich history. However, when we talk about Gnosticism, there's something that's pretty important to note. A lot of the information that's written on Gnosticism is actually written by the Christian church. The Gnostics, while they are Christianity adjacent, were seen as heretics by the governing body of the church. So you have to keep that in mind, right? Like when we talk about these original Gnostic sources, of course we have things by Gnostics like the Nag Hammadi library that was thankfully uncovered relatively recently, but a lot of the original information is pretty much from a very biased position that doesn't really perfectly represent Gnosticism. As well, Gnosticism is not like a unified movement. There's actually a lot of sects. The two that I'm going to focus on is classical Christian Gnosticism and Valentinianism, though I'm going to get into some modern occult Gnostic sects. But Gnosticism in general is pretty broad and can refer to a lot of things. So let's talk about the word. I think everyone in the occult is familiar with the word gnosis, particularly when we talk about a very common term, UPG, or unverified personal gnosis, which is basically your personal experience. And gnosis is basically that. Gnosis is your personal experience with the divinity and having spiritual revelations through direct contact on your own. So Gnosticism, going off of that, obviously rejected the church's narrative that you should be told what to believe by a priest, and instead sought out personal interaction and personal development through direct contact. But it gets a little more complicated than that. So when you read how Christians wrote about the Gnostics, they call them heretics a lot. Heresy is not a bad thing. Heresy is just really questioning doctrine and going against what is known as Nicene Christianity. If you believe in this thing called the Nicene Creed, it's said in church services. Growing up in an Episcopal family, I heard the Nicene Creed all the time. You are considered a Nicene Christian, which is basically the mainstream Christian sects. We're talking about like Catholicism, Episcopalianism, etc., etc. However, Gnostics are non-Nicene, so they actually disagree with the Nicene Creed. Gnostic cosmology is pretty simple. There's this meme that I'm going to pop up on the screen that I think everyone's seen. It's called Les Sad Demiurge, that sums it up in a very fun way. But basically, it's the idea that the world was created by a god named the Demiurge. The Demiurge created an imperfect world. This is where it varies, right? So the Demiurge, according to some Gnostics and very classic Christian Gnosticism, is evil. They created a material reality to make us suffer, to distract us from real enlightenment, to distract us from real religion. And it's basically like evil, the world's an evil prison, we're trapped, this very kind of nihilistic, dark, sad, edgy interpretation. However, in Valentinianism, a big popular Gnostic idea, it states that the Demiurge created a flawed world in reflection of the flawed Demiurge. The world isn't necessarily evil or bad, but just imperfect. However, what Gnosticism shares is beyond the Demiurge, there's what's known as the monad, or the source, or like the true, detached, effervescent God. A lot of people then attach Gnosticism to things like Kabbalah, which I've explored in other videos. But basically, that's like the big concept, right? We are created by a flawed creator, and above the flawed creator, there's this like perfect monad that we need to break through. So through life, we are meant to break through the Demiurge, break through the flawed world, and then achieve up to here. And the way that we do that is through personal experience with divinity, or gnosis. So Gnosticism has a lot of misconceptions, mostly that it's like satanic. Because we've got this critique of the Demiurge, which a lot of people equate to the Christian or Abrahamic God, a lot of people are like, this is kind of the basis of, you know, some sort of antinomian, anti-cosmic type view, right? Where we see the creator as something negative and we have to push against that. However, Gnosticism in and of itself is not really satanic, nor would you call a Gnostic a Satanist. Most Gnostics actually consider themselves just non-Nicene Christians. But definitely when we look at theistic Satanism, Luciferianism, anti-cosmic Satanism, we definitely see a little bit of a Gnostic cosmology thrown onto that. Antinomians really like the Gnostic idea, but Gnosticism is not inherently antinomian. So you do see these darker left-hand path sects taking influence from the Gnostic cosmology, but Gnosticism in and of itself is not this way. In fact, most Gnostics are actually very much aesthetics. So you see Gnostics very much rejecting the material world, similarly to how a Buddhist would reject the material world, moving against hedonism, moving towards purity, fasting, meditation, prayer, all these things to kind of purify the soul to help you lift up to this higher realm, rather than falling into the traps of the material world as created by the demiurge. So it's not like they're doing like really edgy things. A sect that has an interesting idea that kind of is reminiscent of this in the way that it's not. Like what represents what Gnosticism is not is Shabbataeanism. Shabbataeanism is a heretical sect of Judaism that believes that we have fucked up so bad that we need to make the world worse in order for God to come back and reincarnate as, you know, a Christ figure and a Messiah to save the people. It's a Jewish sect, so it has that, like, we need to bring the Messiah back, but to do that, we have to make the world exponentially worse really fast. I actually think Shabbataeanism is really reminiscent of political accelerationism, if you are familiar with accelerationist ideas. I actually think Shabbataeanism is very much like spiritual accelerationism in a lot of ways, but Gnostics don't believe that. Gnostics are not trying to make the world worse. They're typically trying to purify themselves through ritual to break through into the higher realms and to break beyond the mortal shell. So they're not like trying to make the world worse. They're not trying to bring back a Messiah. They're not trying to bring us into some like heavy Revelation style age. They're typically just, you know, trying to make the best out of the situation. And if someone has a more Valentinian worldview, they actually don't really think the world's bad. They actually are like, well, yeah, there are problems. Our world's fucked up. But that doesn't mean everything's wrong. That doesn't mean we need to destroy the world. That doesn't mean that like the world is ruined. We can still make the best out of what we have, and we need to just take that the demiurge did the best he could. He tried. He just didn't, you know, fully succeed. So let's take Gnosticism into the modern day. Obviously, the Gnostics were pretty persecuted, and they weren't really one group. Like there wasn't like a unified, we are the Gnostics, we are the Church of the Gnostics, we love Gnosticism, we pray to the monad every day, right? Like it was not an organized group, it was a fringe sect during the early Christian days. But in modern days, there definitely are Gnostics. People have tried to make Gnostic churches, people have tried to make Gnostic organizations and organize the Gnostic ideas into like a unified corpus and a unified structure, but most Gnostics are solitary. Most of them just kind of are on their own. I do think the Gnostic organizations are really interesting because they definitely try to add like a ceremonial ritual framework on top. Looking into a lot of these Gnostic groups, you very much see a Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, which I have a video of the Golden Dawn style ritual structure thrown into their spiritual practices. So it's like a very ceremonial magic approach and a very, you know, massy, structured way to do things. As well, you do see some left-hand path sects using the term Gnostic in their descriptions or taking influence from Gnostic cosmology and Gnostic ideas, though they tend to take it in a little bit of a different way where they're like, well, the demiurge is bad because that means Yahweh is bad, so we need to worship, insert placeholder spirit here, typically something antinomian, something edgy, something dark. But yeah, there's a lot of modern influence. Thelema, the religion that I follow, the practice that I follow, has a little bit of a Gnostic influence into it. It's not a Gnostic sect, though there is a Thelemic group named the Ecclesia Gnostica Catholica. We're not like true Gnostics, but there definitely is some Gnostic influence on the Thelemic practice. If you guys want a Gnosticism influence on Thelema video, comment below and I will make one. But definitely Gnosticism is going strong. You see Gnosticism having a big influence on things like Rosicrucianism, Hermeticism, alchemy, Kabbalah with a C, talking about C-Bala, but of course the Q-Bala does sometimes come in. So Gnosticism definitely has had a big impact, even though it has been very persecuted and very much against the dogma of the church that has pervaded and had a lot of political and social capital and power for a very long time. If you want to get into Gnosticism, I'm going to put a list of books down below that you can read and check out. My advice if you want to get into Gnosticism, because I've talked about this in a few interviews, I actually really liked the Gnostic ideas when I was a new practitioner, especially when I was younger. I think it's just trying to figure out how it works for you and learning what like that individual one-to-one with spirit interaction is for you, and how that can like connect with you and how you can incorporate that into your life. Also as well, when you're talking about Gnosticism, you're probably gonna wanna look into some Christian literature. I know some people who get into Gnosticism definitely have a like demiurge, bad type mentality, and so they really want to avoid Christian texts, but there's no way you can fully avoid Christian text and be a Gnostic. After all, they are called the Gnostic Christians by a lot of people. I would read all of that. Gnostics also with Jesus tend to have really different ideas. I've seen the take that Jesus was like sent by the monad and is thus not really controlled by the demiurge, but here to free us from the demiurge. I've heard that Jesus is irrelevant, Jesus is just as bad as the demiurge. Like Gnostics have a lot of infighting because it's such a big overlapping ideology. Like there's a lot within it that people disagree on and dispute on and go back and forth on. So there's no like single Gnostic path. If you actually pull up the like Wikipedia list of Gnostic sects that have ever existed, there's like 30 things. So Gnosticism is like a whole big thing, and you can incorporate the Gnostic cosmology on top of all sorts of practices. Like there's no reason why you can't be a chaot and have a Gnostic framework, or you can't be into English folk practices and have a Gnostic worldview. These things are not mutually exclusive, and you can incorporate Gnosticism into your practice and your life in a wide variety of ways. I think Gnosticism is a beautiful tradition, and honestly, the more heretical something is, the more based it is. That's how it works. It's a graph. You see, there's quality of practice here and heresy here, and the line is like that. Just direct correlation. So there's something I need to add to this video. I am wearing this beautiful necklace. It's based off the Temperance Tarot card from ETAH. These wing earrings are based off like fallen angel wings. I think they're gorgeous. And I have a special coupon if you like these pieces. There's a lovely shop called ETAH. There's a code Georgina20 where you can get 20% off your entire order. They have a ton of occult inspired pieces, and I know there are quite a few men in my audience, so they don't only make women's jewelry, they have a lot of rings for men, and a lot of them I think would look really good on male occultists. They've got pieces inspired by tarot, they just released a line inspired by Wicca, and they've got quite a few things from like classic literature. So it's really a great shop. They have amazing alternative jewelry and a lot of religious iconography that you can incorporate into your life, and as well they have like some angelic imagery, which I thought would fit the Gnostic video because we're having a little Abrahamicism moment. So there's a lot of really great pieces from there. I love their shop. I've been wearing these a ton. If you've been following me on TikTok and seeing me on streams and stuff, you notice I've been wearing these like crazy. I just love that there's a pair of earrings that can go past my side locks, because wearing earrings is really hard with these side pieces because they block them. So it's nice to have some danglies. I just think they're a great shop, and the Georgina20 code will save you quite a bit. So I would really suggest using it. And thank you for watching. If you want to support me, I am on Patreon, I am on Ko-Fi, I am on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram. I'm everywhere. And I host the podcast Magnolias and Magic on all podcast providers. They do commentary. So if you want more than just like educational 101 videos from me and you want lengthy hour-long discussions into occult philosophical issues, topics, and community problems, you can check that out. And thank you for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, and ring the bell. And if you're subscribed for 93 days, you will meet your holy guardian angel.